Hi, this is Pam, the founder of Tilt 365. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I think character is really important in leadership development today and has been largely missing for the last 50 years. The character science domain has really been relegated over to the philosophy and religion side of academics and has been sort of absent from psychology and also absent from business for many years. The only place you'll see it is in the military. Also, you'll see it in middle schools with children, and also organizations like the YMCA and so forth. And this is concerning because leadership character and character in general is not something that we learn when we're in seventh grade and then it sticks forever. In the business world in particular, there's so many different temptations and behaviors that we can end up getting caught up in that require regular practice and regular education. And I came upon this thinking 30 years ago when I was in the business world, in the hospitality industry. I was in a team building actually, where we were using Myers-Briggs, and I was sitting next to someone who was the exact same Myers-Briggs that I was, the ENTJ. And while I was thinking about like who am I and who is he, I was thinking, wow, we're so very different. What is that makes us different, but yet our personality traits are the same, or we chose the same answers on the Myers-Briggs? And I found an answer, or at least a clue to an answer, when I was reading the book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This was in the early 90s. And he made a distinction between personality and character that I thought was really important. He said that personality is what we're born with, but character is what we shape over the course of our life. And this became kind of the beginning of my studies in character, and I wondered, maybe that was what might be different between me and that other person. So I started kind of observing him and observing myself and writing down virtues and vices and keeping records of all of the positive behaviors that I noticed in each of us and all of the negative behaviors that I noticed in each of us. And that began kind of my quest for uh, the my understanding of what is character and how can I shape myself into a better person. And at the same time, this person was also someone I worked with, so I was also interested in how can I help that person be the best person they can be as well. And we did end up being friends later, but definitely there were some differences in terms of values that were really about character and timeless choices of will that are about operating from our larger self or our higher self and less from ego. So anyway, this began my quest for the missing metric of what is it that makes us great leaders, and this is where I decided character was something that needed to be studied. One of the things that I noticed as I was observing him versus me, I was looking at his resume. Like, he had a fantastic resume, great experience in our industry. He was very driven for results and very competent, I would say, in our industry. He was also just wicked intelligent, very intelligent person. But the one thing that I began to notice is that he would make choices that I felt were like, I don't think that's the right thing to do, made me feel uncomfortable, and then also made me react in negative ways. So I eventually kind of named this the thing that might make the difference and started studying it. And for 30 years, I've been doing so. And in the around 2004, 2006, Seligman and Peterson began to talk about the character science domain as well. And in their book, Character Strengths and Virtues, that came out, I think, around 2006 or 7, also said the same thing. It kind of had that same conclusion that Personality is only the beginning. It's your character that's going to shape your results and your destiny. And character is actually the thing that makes people want to follow us, and that brings out the best in them. Now, there are other kinds of leaders that are charismatic and that, very compelling, and they kind of represent a dream, and people follow them for a different reason. So that's kind of the distinction here that I want to make, that those that follow leaders of character actually have timeless results and over time end up winning long term and are sustainably better over the course of time. So, how is character different from personality? Let's first start there. With personality traits, you can have a rigid mindset about the fact that this is me, this is who I am, and you may not like it, but that's too bad. So it's kind of the I am who I am, so deal with it, and I'm not responsible for how you feel. So I'm not gonna work toward being a better person. It is just this is what I've been dealt, and this is who I am, and that's what you get. There's a very different kind of mindset when you're talking about character traits. Carol Dweck also has coined the term growth mindset, which is sort of similar to what we've been talking about as the agile mindset for many years. Slightly different, but same kind of sentiment, that I'm responsible for how I behave, and I will always be working to improve my interactions with others, and increasingly working with greater mindfulness and respectfulness toward others. And when I trigger someone and put them in a bad place, it isn't my responsibility to fix how they're feeling, but it is my responsibility to look at what was my intention with that person, and how could I actually bring out the best in them instead of the worst in them. So it's not taking responsibility for other people's behavior or reactions to us, but taking responsibility for our part in it, and understanding that different people want to interact in different ways, and that it's our responsibility to tilt in or lean in to some degree to respect their nature. It's kind of like visiting another country. We don't go in and just say, I'm just going to be, how we are in my culture. We go in kind of investigating, like, how is it to be here, and how are they different, and what would be respectful in this other kind of culture. So it's sort of like that. Anyway, this agile mindset is very different from the leader who has the rigid mindset and just expects you to adapt around them. A little deeper on that, the rigid mindset about personality can be positive or negative. If you happen to have had really great parents that taught you a lot of character in the first 20 years of your life, then your personality and character kind of shaped itself, and your behaviors are generally positive. But not everybody has that perfect background, and so sometimes if we have a rigid mindset about this is just how I am, too bad, then it, of course, can have a negative influence on other people. It can lead to extremes, and extremes, we go into that in another place in our education on character science, but it's based on Aristotle's golden mean that, extremes can be useful in moderation, and infrequently to kind of catch attention, but they're not good when they're very frequent. It's very disturbing and chaos creating, actually, for other people to be so unpredictable with extremes. And personality can be often fear based, because ego is what's happening when we interact just from personality, not from character. And the ego often is just there to survive, to ensure that we survive. So it's kind of personality is a strategy for survival. But it's very single minded and very focused on me surviving in my environment. So sometimes for others, that's not so good. So often, what can happen is it triggers unproductive conflict, distracts people from doing their best work, and it can even manipulate other people to our own selfish, needs and wants. And so it's not mutually beneficial. And in essence, the biggest problem with the rigid mindset is that it shrinks influence. It shrinks our influence with other people. We end up having less friends, less colleagues that trust us, less people who want to be around us, that kind of It's that the two magnets that kind of repel each other. It shrinks our influence and makes people not want to be influenced by us. Contrast that with character traits and the agile mindset. These are universally positive behavior traits. They are mostly by choice. They're not something we're born with. They're taught to us by our family of origin and beyond, and mentors and leaders for many, many years. And so it's a continuous learning process. Um, Character traits versus personality traits are also balanced and conscious. That means they come from will and choice and are wired in after repeated behaviors. They're strengths based instead of fear based. They increase productivity and generativity. They encourage responsibility and respect for others. They come from choice. They embrace, diversity, and they actually altogether expand our positive influence, which of course was what that book Stephen Covey wrote was all about, is how to be positively a very effective person with others in relationship. And so it was a very pivotal book in my development. um, Expanding in positive influence is what leadership is. That's the definition of leadership. So it is what we need to choose to do. And character intelligence and character development is something that we need to get up and practice every day. It's it's the delayed gratification. It's doing the right thing even when it's not popular. It's speaking your mind for what is right and for truth, even if it might have some repercussions. So it's not always easy, and it requires a lot of courage. What we call the character science chain is how character in the self has an influence on teams and climate and culture around us. And it starts with who we're being. And if who we're being is governed more by character strength development than personality, then what ends up happening is our doing creates exponential productivity. It's because we're not triggering other people into negative office politics. And because of that distraction, we can't be productive. So if we're practicing being positive character strengths with others, then what we are doing ends up being much more generative and productive for us and for others. And when we're doing that, we're actually creating a lot of generativity in the team climate around us. And what's possible when that happens is rapid innovation. And it's because if you think about the math, if we're not doing office politics and ego fear behavior and triggering each other and getting into a bunch of mess, then we're able to focus all of our effort into generating. And that means productivity, creativity, and innovation. So we're doing the work that we're called here to do. We're focused on our purpose. We're doing work that's really fun and engaging, and it puts us in flow. And what that does for our team and for the company that we're working for is help them thrive. And so it increases our competitive relevance over time because we're exponentially much more generative than a team or a climate or a company that is filled with, the rigid, shrinking influence and a lot of triggering office politics and drama. So this is how the character chain works. There is a lot of other evidence beyond our own. We've been researching for over 31 years and have great research behind the TILT model, which I'll show you in another science and methodology video. But we also like the work of Fred Keel, who published a book called Return on Character, where he showed 5 times more return on assets for those leaders, especially at the very top, the C-level leaders. Their business performance and ROA is 5 times greater if the leader is seen as someone who practices good character and that agile mindset. You might wonder why. Well, it's because of psychological safety. If we feel emotionally safe to make mistakes, to speak our mind, speak our convictions, and so on, then the psychological safety creates a safe environment for us to kind of really explore and expand and be our best self. Whereas if psychological safety is not there, we all become more, careful, more withdrawn, more unwilling to share ideas, unwilling to make mistakes, and so many other things. So people in general are more generative when they're not involved in these unconscious office politics. And that, when I say unconscious, most of us don't realize how many ego politics are happening in each meeting that we're in. And that's what we teach, is we help people really get much more alert and clear and conscious about what's actually going on in meetings when you're with other people that you work with, and what kinds of behaviors are you really involved in. Are they generative or are they counterproductive? So that's it on this particular topic. We do call character the blind spot of our time in business, and in many other institutions. And character is the thing that is going to help the next generation of leaders solve the very complex global problems of our time. Without it, we will have people making decisions from an unethical place, and that puts all of us at risk. So thank you for listening.